time to feel some type of way? Hello, this is What's with People with Doc Locke. I'm social psychologist Dr. Stephanie Lockbuehler, and today we will be talking about the question, what's with people having emotions? What are emotions? Why do we have them? And what can science tell us about them? I get so emotional, baby. And then rose petals. You know what I mean. Last video, we talked about happiness, how it's defined, and what makes people happy. But happiness is just one emotion. Today, we're going to talk about all of them in terms of what they are and what the theories are behind the how and why of them. So let's start with, what are emotions? While the definition of emotions is still up for debate amongst researchers, most agree that emotions are defined as a complex mental state that is made up of three parts: the subjective experience, or the thing or situation that produces or provokes the emotion; the physiological response, or the response our body has automatically to the situation; and behavioral or expressive response, or the outward reaction we have as a result to the response of the situation. Like primary colors in a color wheel, we also have primary emotions. Some researchers say that there are 8 of them, some say 4, some say 6. For this video, let's stick with the middle ground of 6, which are sadness, happiness, fear, anger, disgust, and surprise. Regardless of how many, the underlying idea stands that there are primary, basic, universally experienced emotions with universally experienced facial expressions. In other words, most humans have them. Like primary colors, these can be mixed together to create complex emotions like guilt, jealousy, grief, regret, or even liberosis, which is the desire to care less about things because there's just too many responsibilities that we have as adults. It's a mix of yearning, a pinch of frustration, and a dab of nostalgia of our carefree childhood days. Like, remember the good old days when our teddy bears could tell us stories and sing to us in an absolutely terrifying manner?
If I dream a good one, and if I dream is right.
However, unlike primary emotions, these complex emotions vary on how they're expressed on a person's face between different people or cultures, or maybe they don't have a facial expression at all. But let's not confuse emotions with moods. Moods and emotions are very different in 3 big ways. First, moods are not as intense as emotions. They also tend to be longer lasting. For example, you can be in a mood for hours or even days, whereas an emotion may only last for a few minutes. Also, emotions are a reaction to something specific, like a situation, but moods aren't necessarily a reaction, it's just an overall feeling. But they are somewhat connected. For example, moods can make a person more likely to have certain emotions. Like negative moods can make us more prone to anger, sadness, or anxiousness, while a good mood can make us more prone to joy or pride. But again, they are separate, and don't you forget it. Sorry, I'm in a little bit of a bad mood right now. Alright, so what is the function of emotions, or why do we have them at all? According to the evolutionary perspective, emotions evolved to help humans and animals to survive and reproduce. For example, affection and attraction leads people to mate, fear drives people to fight or escape threats or danger, and anger drives people to get what's theirs, bro! Emotions motivate people to quickly respond to things happening around us, which helps our chances of surviving and reproducing. And just as important to our survival is understanding other people's emotions. For example, if you see someone scowling at you and yelling and cussing and shaking their fist, you will quickly realize that the person is angry and potentially violent. So you might leave quickly or put up your own defenses. So being able to recognize emotional displays of other people and even animals helps us to react appropriately to escape or confront danger. Also, emotions help us to communicate with others about our intentions and our needs, and they give us information and insights into ourselves, what we value, what's important to us, what we need, and what we need to change, and they motivate us to take action. But amongst all these functions that I just mentioned, the one that stands out in all of them is that emotions help us to take action. I mean, the word emotion comes from the Latin words for energy and moving, so there you go. But what kind of action are we talking about? Well, Anger and fear, for example, are particularly action-oriented emotions. Anger at injustice can motivate people to take action to remedy the injustice, and fear prompts the fight or flight response, which is pretty useful when you're in a dangerous situation. But emotions don't always have to lead to action. We may not have control over our emotions, but we do, most of the time, have control over our actions. This is good news because most people have some level of fear when they speak in public, and it isn't the best to just run off stage or fight your audience in those situations, no matter how much you might want to. Similarly, there happen to be a lot of laws against the type of actions that anger can motivate. All emotions, even happiness, have the ability to lead to behavior. But for the most part, we do have the ability to make choices regarding our behavior in the face of emotions, like, maybe choosing not to jump on Oprah's couch. So now I'm going to talk about some of the theories of emotions proposed by psychologists: the James-Lange Theory, the Canon Theory, the Schachter-Singer Theory, and the facial feedback theory. As mentioned earlier, there is still debate amongst researchers on what emotions are, hence the different theories. Though all of these theories do acknowledge and incorporate those three components that we talked about earlier. Remember?
Subjective experience, or the thing or situation that provokes the emotion, physiological response, or the response that our body automatically has to the situation, and behavioral or expressive response, or the outward reaction that we have as a result to the situation.
The difference between these theories is more in the order of appearance of these components, in a sense. Sometimes it feels a little bit like the chicken or the egg argument, if the chicken was the emotion and the physiological reaction was the egg. Whatever. Starting us off is the James-Lange Theory, which suggests that emotions are a result of physiological reactions to a situation or stimulus. In other words, something happens that leads to a physical or bodily reaction, and then an emotional reaction occurs as a result. For example, suppose that you're hanging out at home watching this video and you see a gigantic spider crawl across the wall. Oh my God! You startle and your heart begins to race. The James-Lange Theory says that you will then conclude that you are scared because of the racing heart that you experience. In other words, according to this theory, your heart isn't racing because you're scared, but instead you feel scared because your heart is racing. Basically, the James-Lange Theory of emotions is like saying the egg, or the physiological reaction, came first, and the chicken, or the emotion, came after. See what I did there? Another theory of emotion is the Canon Theory. This theory disagrees with the James-Lange Theory because they say that people can experience bodily reactions typically linked to emotions without actually feeling those emotions. For example, your heart may race because you have heartburn, or maybe you just walked up a flight of stairs, not because you're scared. So Canon Theory says that the emotion happens too quickly to just be because of physical responses. So this theory states that emotions and physical reactions happen at the same time. In other words, in response to seeing a giant spider crawl on the wall, the brain creates a physical reaction of a racing heart, and at the same time, this triggers an emotional reaction of feeling scared. Basically, this theory says that the chicken and the egg exist at the same time, and one doesn't come before the other. On the other hand, the Schachter-Singer Theory of emotion, also known as the two-factor theory of emotion, says that we experience a physiological reaction first, and then we have to identify the reason for this reaction for it to be felt and labeled as an emotion. In other words, the spider crawls across the wall, which creates a physical response of a racing heart, and then we think about the physical response of the racing heart and then interpret it and give it a name, which results in the emotion of fear. So it's similar to the James-Lange Theory and the Canon Theory. Like the James-Lange Theory, it says that we figure out the emotion based on the physical response that happens first. Basically, that our thoughts about the physical response creates the emotion. And like the Canon Theory, it says that physical responses can be attributed to multiple emotions. So we need our thoughts to help us identify what emotion that we're feeling. But it's our thoughts about the physical response that creates the emotion. One study famously demonstrated this. In this study, male participants walked across one of two bridges, either a rickety rope bridge over a deep and scary ravine, or a stable bridge over pretty scenery and not so dangerous drop. At the end of each bridge, there was an experimenter who also happened to be a hot chick, and she asked some basic survey questions and then gave each man a card with her contact information if they had any questions. The idea was this: the guy guys who walked across the scary bridge had more physiological arousal from the walk. In other words, they had a higher heart rate and increased sweating from the fear, more so than those who didn't walk across the scary bridge and walked across the not so scary bridge. But when the scary bridge walking sweaty dudes came in contact with the hot chick experimenter, they misattributed their racing heart to the feeling of being attracted to the hot chick, and they were more likely to call the hot chick than the men who walked on the not so scary bridge. So it seems that the Schachter-Singer Theory is saying that the physiological response of a racing heart from seeing a giant spider, combined with the thoughts of labeling and identifying the emotion behind the racing heart, creates the experience of the emotion of fear. So the egg, or the physiological response, came first in this one, but the egg plus incubation, or thoughts, creates the chicken, or the emotion. Are you following this? Is this even making sense? Finally, there is the facial feedback theory of emotion that says that our behavioral or expressive responses, or our facial expressions, are a direct connection to our emotion rather than an outcome of our emotion. So for example, when people force themselves to smile at a party versus having a forced frown or a forced neutral facial expression, the forced smiley people are more likely to say that they had a better time at the party. Other studies have also found that people who have Botox, or a chemical that immobilizes facial muscles, particularly muscles associated with negative facial expressions like frowning and scowling, may actually experience reduced depression since their facial expressions for sadness are also reduced. So if we're using the spider example, the startled expression on your face from seeing the giant spider is what induces the emotion of fear. So really, instead of the behavior or expressive response being the result of the chicken or the egg, it's kind of like giving main character energy. So it seems like the baby chick came first in this theory? This isn't working. While researchers argue about which came first, the chicken or the egg or the baby chick or whatever, the main takeaways of this video are that 1, emotions are made up of 3 components. Yeah, I'm gonna say them again.
Subjective experience, or the thing or situation that provokes the emotion, physiological response, or the response that our body automatically has to the situation, and behavioral or expressive response, or the outward reaction that we have as a result to the situation.
And emotions exist to help us survive and reproduce. They help us to communicate to each other and to ourselves and to motivate us to take action. And even though we can't control emotions, we can control our behaviors in response to those emotions. I guess I could have said that all in the beginning and you wouldn't have had to watch all this, huh? Oh well, we had fun, right? We felt so many emotions, the joy, the laughter, the heartache, and the pain. We really got to know each other and ourselves through this. You know, we had so many highs and lows and shared our feelings. Things were really great back then, weren't they? For more videos, check out whatswithpeople.com or check us out on YouTube and TikTok and Facebook and Instagram and all of those places. Thanks so much. Bye. Teddy Ruxpin up in his bitch. Let's go with it.